maybe we should start off with Natalie.
Yeah.
Do you think, as a supporter, kind of?
I mean, when Anwar told me that thing about the whole people reacting negatively, I was, well, not surprised, but just shocked. Just, you know, it didn't feel nice as a you know, a young black person. I remember when it all started, the Premier League started back up again, and it, you know, you saw that was the image, that was the first image back from football. I felt proud. I felt pride in myself. I thought, that's my team. They're doing that. It feels good. You know, they had Black Lives Matter on the shirt. They had the badges, and I like that. Obviously, the season stopped and started again. Women's football has only just started again, and we're seeing them join in with the Premier League and the other leagues that are doing it. But I think I voted in it, and I said until we see change. I think who said it? Les Ferdinand said it. You know, QPR didn't take the knee, and it's not because he doesn't believe in it or he doesn't think, but it's like what Troy said. It's like it's a token. It's like it's just a gesture, and until we see, like, potentially, I know there's talk of like a black player union coming up, and you know, things like fans that for diversity. I think that's really key. And still, until we see change, until we see potentially, you know, Premier League, the FA making big changes and, you know, pushing things and really educating, getting the clubs to educate the fans, getting the clubs to educate the players, I don't think it should stop. And I think if someone then wants to boo or do this or post stuff on online, then it just shows that it needs to be done. I think if people are sort of sitting there saying this and that, but I think potentially people are shouting out about it because maybe they don't understand, and I think more needs to be done like this, like, you know, kick it out to tell people this is why we're doing it. You know, it's not just an American thing, it's things that are happening over here. It's not just about George Floyd. This is why you should get involved and, you know, get behind projects like this and projects like Kick It Out.
Fantastic. And Rodney, what are your thoughts? You're on mute.
You're on mute, Rodney.
There's always one. I was deep in thought listening to Natalie, so apologies. It's a very difficult question to answer because you can look at it in so many different ways. It's all about what the players want to do. That's where it starts, whether the players want to take the knee or not, whether it's in conjunction with a discussion, whether it's an individual's decision. It's about what they want to do. The fans will always complain. Fans complain about everything. Taking the knee isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, but it's about the journey to diversity and inclusion. That's the, you know, the end game. You know, taking the knee is just a process in which people can complain or show they're upset about something or choose to stand by someone. It's just a thing. You know, if taking the knee was part of the Christmas celebration, no one would complain. If it was part of, you know, the 5th of November celebration, no one would complain. If it was part of British history, no one would complain. It's linked to a group or an organization or a theme about saying no to injustice, no to being pushed to the side, no more poor treatment. That's all it means. So whether the players choose to do it as a collective or as an individual, that should be down on them. With regards to, you know, the general public, as I am one of them as a fan, I will look at it and make my own mind up whether they decide to do it or not. But the decision about them taking the knee should come from the players, because we as supporters, as viewers or voyeurs, we will always say something isn't right because we watch it from a distance and we're not part of the conversation. And it really does need to be, in terms of taking the knee, it needs to be a conversation that is led by the players, and the information that then comes from that conversation is shared with the fans. Not the conversation with the fans telling the players what they should and shouldn't. It doesn't work that way. Because if I choose to take the knee, there isn't anything that anyone can tell me that will stop me from taking the knee, if I choose to do it. So if players are choosing to do it, then they need to make the decision for themselves and then, you know, disseminate the information. So it is a very difficult you know, kind of conversation to have, because there are so many different layers to that one symbol. And it is more, it's just a symbol. You know, what's really required, as Les Ferdinand said, is action. Taking the knee is not action. Having a conversation about inequality and injustice, that's action. That's part of it. So taking the knee is, you know, it's like wearing a pinny. It's like wearing a badge. It's like wearing, you know, it's like having a birthday card that you keep bringing out and saying it's my birthday. It's nothing more than that. It means something until everyone says we are going to actually come together and have a conversation, an equal conversation about the disparities in society. And then people will no longer take the knee. And it goes back to what Manny was saying, is about you need more people to have a conversation at the table where they understand that there is difference, there is a disparity, whether it's, you know, rich or poor. We've seen it with Marcus Rashford's battle with the Parliament and the Prime Minister, that people will fill the void with something that goes against the grain. So, you know, I don't want to go on too long, but I think for me, it's very, very difficult to say, as a football fan, they should not do it or they should do it. It's about the players, the club saying, this is what we have decided and this is why we are or not going to do this action, or should I say, take this symbolic step.
Thank you, Rodney. I'll say on that, and following up from Rodney, your answer to the question, first of all, but also how, taking Rodney's point, that conversation is taken to fans that maybe aren't supportive of players taking the knee. How do we bridge that, if you're able to answer that as a supplementary?
Yeah, I'll try. I think, as always with these type of huge issues, it always seems to fall on the players to make the biggest stand and make the most noise. As someone who used to play, and I look at those players as an older man now, and you know, a lot of these young men who are, you know, putting themselves on the line, they're very young men, and they shouldn't be having to put themselves on such a big stage to make such a stand. I think, you know, it is down to the individual to decide whether or not they want to take a knee or not. But I would like to see the knee as part of a general overall strategy. So on the one hand, we're going to take the knee, but then on the other hand, we have a list of demands. On the other hand, we're going to go straight to our board of directors. We're going to go to the chairman, we're going to go to the owner, and we're going to lobby against our own club in the same way that your Marcus Rashfords are lobbying against the government. So I think the need can have a place as part of a wider plan. But I'm always reluctant that the players always seem to be the ones that have to put themselves above the parapet when they are young men trying to have a career in the game, and now they have to take on all of this extra strain that is of no fault of their own, but they take it on board and try and do the best that they can. So I would like to see it as part of a wider strategy. And can you just remind me of the second part of the question? Sorry.
Just how you take that conversation, or the points of the conversation, to fans that maybe either disagree or aren't aware of the arguments around it, the reasons for it.
Again, I've kind of said it in my first point. I don't think that the players should have to be going to convince anybody. I would like to see, you know, the real big hitters in the game, you know, the chief execs, the owners, you know, the heads of the major governing bodies, to protect the players and say, okay, these are our players, this is what they think, and you know what, we believe them and we back them, and this is what we're going to do, and this is why we're going to do it. And not, listen, you don't want to start a civil war in football, but the decision makers, the main decision makers, you know, have to take a stand and take the burden away from the players, so that people can understand a little bit more. You know, I think when Raheem Sterling was speaking, you know, maybe just over a year ago, about racism, I said at the time, how great would it be if the England captain Harry Kane was the one to speak out with as much passion as Raheem Sterling spoke out about racism? How much more powerful would that have been in that moment? How much more powerful would it be if you saw club owners deciding, or chief execs deciding, that they're going to come on the TV and they're going to do the TV interview they're going to talk about Black Lives Matter or whatever protests or taking knees or their long-term strategy to affect change. How much more powerful would that be if they were to go and do webinars like this and speak to fans and explain to people and help people understand? I think it's so much more powerful. Whether that happens remains to be seen. In this moment in time, it seems like it's the right thing to do, so everyone is just happy to let the players go along with it. But the proof is always in the pudding. And we will see as we move post, well, I don't think we'll ever see a post-COVID. It's always going to be here. But as we move back towards more of a time where it was before, start of next season perhaps, we'll see where we are, and we'll see what the aims are and whether or not anything can be achieved.
Thank you, Osei. Troy, would you like to take that forward and maybe respond to some of Osei's comments, and also comment on the chat about, you know, it's a powerful initiative, but should it have an agreed and defined maybe ending point? I've seen the argument elsewhere about, you know, the clap for the NHS had a point where it ended, and should that be the same for players taking the knee?
My response was indefinitely, because I think the second question in the poll was until we see more change. Well, I'm telling you now, I haven't seen any change. So the reason the players took the knee to start with, and everyone's right, the players took the knee, by the way, was first and foremost solidarity towards their US partners for what was happening out there. You know, the situation with George Floyd, it's not the first situation, but it was a moment when absolutely everyone said, yeah, you know what, we've just had enough now. The players came together and created players together and supported the NHS with their own funds. You know, they didn't want their funds diluted by giving it to football and then football to put it wherever it wanted to do. They wanted to put their own funds directly to the NHS. And then on the back of that, they wanted significantly to talk about Black Lives Matter. And taking the knee was part of that first process of solidarity. But the second process was for football to start to look at itself and come up with initiatives and actions that would demonstrate that they understood what the players were saying. I haven't seen any of those initiatives or actions. There will be a leadership code coming out tomorrow from the FA. I think it's tomorrow. It may have come out later today. We'll wait and see what the targets have been hit there. But I haven't seen anything demonstrated at the moment that tells me that change is just around the corner. I've seen more of an outcry against the knee than what I have for the knee. I've seen more of a negative reaction than a positive reaction. I've seen a plane flown over the Etihad with White Lives Matter, which for me, at the time that the players were taking the knee, was almost stuff you, 2 fingers up to whatever you're doing. This is what we believe. So for me, the game has far too often ignored this topic of conversation. Far too often. There'll be outcry when, you know, our players are subjected to the abuse, the racial abuse and all the other abuse that they were subjected to out in Bulgaria or Montenegro. Then we see our leaders, don't we? Our leaders are prepared to be interviewed and step up and challenge FIFA and Bulgaria and Montenegro for allowing their fans to racially abuse our English players. And so the comment from Ozzy, you know, I want to see our leaders up. Where are they when it happens here? Where are they when, you know, that uncomfortable conversation, the one that Ben Mee had, by the way, when he was just about to be asked, you know, why did you concede 5 goals at the Etihad? And he said, you know what, there's something more important that I want to talk about. For me, that's leadership. That shows someone who understands the purpose, the reason, never experienced it, a little bit uncomfortable in how he was saying it, but he was very careful and meticulous in how he put his point across. Now, if you replace Ben Mee with the chairman of or the director of, then that will make that, for me, that will show that they're taking this on board. But at the moment, and I get told off quite a lot because I always dig them out, and I'm sorry, I don't football is ready for the kind of change that we actually want and need, so that we have an equal playing field, a level playing field across the game. and so that we can all be respected for the contributions that we have and that we have made in the game, and that we can all be acknowledged for what we bring to the game. There's part of me that says we're still talking about this in 2020. The knee is not the thing, by the way. Les Ferdinand is absolutely spot on, and that's not being disrespectful to the knee, but we've included it in this conversation. It's the action part of it, and we're still talking about this in 2020, and the fact that we're still doing that is beyond me. But I tell you now, when fans are allowed back in, let's think about America. You know, it's not been all plain sailing over there. Colin Kaepernick took the knee, you know, during the national anthem. Never played a minute of sport again, you know. American footballers, soccer players, sorry, anyone that's American here, I've got to distinguish between the two, but, you know, they took the knee recently as fans were allowed back and got booed, you know. Home section of the fans booing those players, you know. And do I think that will happen in England? I've got to be honest, I think it would. I do believe that there'll be a little bit of outcry, and I do believe that there'll be those who will be telling players to get up and why are you doing that and all stuff like that. And that's a societal thing that will come into our game because you have government ministers that talk absolute crap about the subject and want to get involved in football when they have no right to get involved because they can't even get what they're doing right. And so they fuel the attitude and the mindset of people to be negative, and they fuel the attitude and mindset of those who will then see the knee as a gesture almost against English heritage, if you don't mind me saying. So whilst I do feel that it will be controversial, I think we've got to be strong against it. And like I said, until there is change, for me, it stays indefinitely.